I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. We are bringing our redraft rankings in for a landing with the top 25 wide receivers. So that is something to be excited about. We are also on the cusp, I believe, the last weekend of preseason games. I think they start tonight. I know they all have to be done by Saturday during the day, and then we're going to have cut downs over the weekend. So we're going to see a lot of rosters coming into shape. And some of the players, it's fair to wonder, I was right. Pittsburgh and Carolina are playing right now, and New England and New York Giants are playing tonight on Prime Video. I knew Prime Video had to have their, their preseason game. All these networks need one big preseason game. Of course, Fox getting that game that Buffalo decided not to show up against the Bears was real fun for them. But the watch is on for some of these. We did get a few trades, which we're going to talk about, but the trade watch is officially on for Brian Robinson Jr. and Anthony Richardson. Brian Robinson was kind of a surprise coming into the Monday night game that he wasn't going to play. They have pretty well said that he's played his last down for the Commanders, which I think is always a curse if you're trying to trade a player. If you said you're going to release him, that he's not going to play for you no matter what, because I don't know what the impetus is for other teams to give you a lot of stuff. Anthony Richardson did not win the starting job for the Colts, and they have not said they want to move on from him. In fact, they've talked about wanting to keep him, but his agents made a lot of noise about him needing to get out and get a fresh start. Dennis, do you think either of these players gets traded before the season?
I think the running back rooms are going to have to shake out a little bit. Brian Robinson, definitely has a role. He's a two-down grinder. He's what I say, dollar store Najee Harris. And they basically just said, look, we got cheaper guys that can do the same thing as you. And, Chris Rodriguez is that guy. They like Bill Krosky-Merritt. And it seems like that team is really it's going to be a difficult situation for fantasy the way they've constructed that running back group, because you're going to have Austin Eckler catching the passes, Chris Rodriguez in the short yardage goal line situations, and Corey Krosky-Merritt between the 20s. So it's really like that's a recipe for none of them to be great at fantasy. I would expect, Krosky-Merritt's got decent size. He's not as big as Rodriguez, but he's not as small as Eckler either. And I think Krosky-Merritt has the potential to maybe move into a more prominent role, taking some of the short yardage stuff, taking some of the receiving stuff. It'll be interesting to see if Eckler looks a little quicker this year. But they've said to Brian Robinson, for what we're paying you, we would rather not. The weird thing is that basically, if they cut him, the cap hit is literally what's left on his contract. So it isn't like they're saving a bunch of money by cutting him, so they have to trade him. And so what are they going to pay half of it to let somebody take him off their hands? I don't know. What are they going to? He was what, a 4th round pick?
Actually, according to he was a 3rd round pick. According to Spot Track, it would be quite a bit of savings if his dead cap number is much smaller than his contract.
I'm seeing his cap hit at 3.6.
Yes, that would be if he stays on the roster. His cap hit is 3.6 million. The dead cap, if he got cut, is 283,000.
So it looks like Spot Track has changed there.
Yeah, maybe. That's why I went to.
You have a paid subscription there, do you?
No, I'm just looking at their cap breakdown.
I was looking at his contract and straight up instead of the.
Yeah, I sometimes I do go look to see. I honestly, I don't think it's that onerous of a contract. We kind of have to look, I guess, at the Commanders' overall cap situation to see whether that was. They have quite a bit of dead cap already. The Commanders have almost 15 million in dead cap, but it says they have about 17 million in cap space right now with the allocations. So I don't know. It just feels like a weird move. I will be honest, for me, I have a few shares of Eckler. I had picked up a few shares of Krosky Merritt this 3 rookie drafts. I picked up a couple shares of Chris Rodriguez on the waiver wire. So I have a few of all 3. And you know what? I was thinking to myself, I'm never going to feel good about playing any of them.
That is absolutely correct. Now, I could see, Robinson, his skill set would pair good with Alvin Kamara in New Orleans, replacing Najee Harris.
Miller, you think?
Well, but Miller he's star-crossed.
Well, here's the thing, though. New Orleans sucks, and adding a running back, I don't think makes them definitively better. Why would they? I guess it's a short investment, but I feel like Robinson would be best served to a team that fancies themselves a competitor that is thin. Like, I actually think if I was Houston, I'd be looking at this because no one is really sure what's going on with Joe Mixon. They have made no statements about him coming off NFI. Nick Chubb's coming back off an injury and has a spotty injury history. Dameon Pierce is also on the PUP list. And Houston is actually a team that should be able to win its division and go into the playoffs, but they would be a lot better having a running back. I could see that making some sense. I feel like that's kind of a situation where it would make some sense.
And I don't disagree with that, but I went and took a look at the, after, the Devon Vele trade to New Orleans. I think that, that kind of springboards that offense. But they're aside from their historical cap situation, they've got Alvin Kamara and Juwan Johnson, who are, we know what we're getting there. They've got Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, and we know what we're getting there. If Olave's healthy, if he can keep his head in the game, doesn't get rocked again, he's one of the better wide receivers in the league. Adding Devon Vele, he moves into the big slot position. That gives them, I think he upgrades their 3rd wide receiver position, moves Brandon Cooks out to the 4. But looking at their offensive line, they have 4 first-round draft picks and a second-round draft pick. Now, McCoy is from 19 and Ruiz is from 20, so it isn't like they're all spring chickens, but that's a lot of high draft capital in the offensive line. And if that offensive line gels a little bit, you're not going to need Spencer Rattler or Tyler Shook to play like peak era Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. you're just going to need them to be competent to get over that. You said their over-under was 5.5. Defense was kind of their issue last year. They had let's see, I pulled that up because they had the 19th ranked scoring defense last year, which isn't awful, but production-wise, 27th in passing, 31st in rushing. But they didn't give up as many points as you would have thought based on those rankings. So maybe maybe they overperform our expectations, and adding somebody like Brian Robinson to go along with Alvin Kamara in the more traditional Sean Payton type backfield. Maybe, I don't know. They've got a new head coach, and so we'll see what happens with how.
I just think they would be so much better served letting themselves bottom out, and I don't think collecting Brian Robinson helps them. I was looking real quick at depth charts and teams. So here are some teams that I think it would actually help. I mentioned Houston because they have a curious situation. Kansas City. I think that would definitely help.
But he's kind of redundant to Isaiah Pacheco.
I think he's better than Isaiah Pacheco, but Dallas, whether they could get it done within the division is a question. But Miles Sanders was not a great signing, according to our lads. He's behind Phil Maffa on the depth chart, and Jaden Blue, who they said was lazy and ineffective. So definitely could help that. Chicago, who has Swift, but he could be a nice complementary back for a coach that knows what to do with the running game and a team that fancies itself ready to maybe make a modest leap into a low-end wildcard position. So those are a couple of teams where I think it would make sense. If New Orleans did that, I not only do I not think it necessarily helps them to be any better as a team, I think they'll get crucified by their fans. Their fans have already been upset. Devon Bailey was a 7th-round draft pick. His contract is really short, is really small, and he's in his second year, so you would control his – I think he has 3 years left on his contract. I think that was a dumb trade for them too, for the Saints.
Yeah.
Because they gave him a 4th and a 7th for a guy who was a 7th-round pick. But we can talk about that next. There were 2 trades for wide receivers. Denver shipped Devon Bailey to the Saints for 4th and 7th. Meanwhile, Kansas City finally gave up on Sky Moore, probably faster than even diehard fantasy players have given up on him. He got traded to San Francisco. Rough tidings for San Francisco. Demarcus Robinson got a 3-game suspension. Juwan Jennings still on PUP with the calf issue. Brandon Ayuk not going to be ready until after week 6.
I think Jennings has a cash issue, not a calf issue.
He apparently has both. Jordan Watkins is out. So they were actually looking at starting the season probably with Ricky Pearsall and Robbie Chosen as their wide receivers. And I'm not sure Sky Moore is an upgrade for me. For fantasy, I'm still not on the Sky Moore train. Devon Bailey, I think, is just a casualty of the fact I talked about how good Pat Bryant and Troy Franklin have looked, and Troy Franklin has been the talk of training camp. They also have Marvin Mims, Cortland Sutton, and Trent Sherfield has actually looked like a pretty incredible receiver from what I've seen in the preseason. So I think Bailey was a luxury player for them, and for Denver to have gotten a 4th-round pick back for a guy that they picked in the 7th round last year feels like something tantamount to a miracle. I don't know how that makes a lot of sense for New Orleans. I know Bub Means is out for the year. New Orleans doesn't have a quarterback, so that's their first problem. And they have Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and they re-signed Brandon Cooks. So, it probably gives them depth. Mason Tipton, I thought, had looked good in preseason, and now this kind of calls into question him. I know they had a ton of injuries last year, but I'm not sure either of these trades make the receiving team better.
So how many years have we thought, because of the cap situation, New Orleans has needed to just completely wipe everything off the books? And they continually don't. They keep kicking the can down the road and getting rid of people and restructuring. And so they're bringing in a guy that I think they feel like has a little bit of potential, that, is a little more mature because he did his mission. So he's 26 years
He's
old or
27.
something. And so they can bring him in. He's affordable, short term. Yes, they gave up a 4th and a 7th, which is an overpay. But they've been delusional for years in the fact that they think they can compete. So it kind of tracks for what they're doing. Sky Moore, we know what Sky Moore is and who Sky Moore is. And if you can't be successful with Patrick Mahomes, I don't think Brock Purdy is the key to unlocking you. I like Brock Purdy as a quarterback, but I don't know how much he is going to lift a receiver the quality of Sky Moore. And Sky Moore needs somebody to lift him up. It's to me, it's just, it was one of those situations where Andy Reid was like, look, somebody give me a nickel and they can have this guy. And San Francisco's like, what the hell? Why not?
How about a wooden nickel? You spoke to the cap. I was just looking. New Orleans has $89 million in dead cap this year. Let me read you some of the dead cap that they're carrying into this year. I think they are working toward being out of it. Based on some of the looks of these contracts and stuff, their biggest contract that they're carrying on the roster right now is Taysom Hill, who's in the last year of his contract, who it makes no sense to cut because his dead cap number would be about 18 million, which is what his salary is. But here's their dead cap this year. Marshawn Lattimore, 31.6 million dead cap. Derek Carr, 19.2 in dead cap. Ryan Ramczyk, 11 million in dead cap. I believe he retired. Michael Thomas, who hasn't been relevant from a football standpoint in 5 years, 9.2 million dead cap. Jameis Winston, who has not played for them in 3 years, 7.3 million dead cap. Tyrann Mathieu, 4.5 million dead cap. Jamal Williams, 2.3 million dead cap. And they have a bunch of guys smaller, but holy buckets. When you see Michael Thomas is costing you 9.2 million in 2025, and he hasn't really been a factor for you on the field since I think 2019. It's a problem.
Great, Bob.
One bit of contract news: Tyson Bagent signed a new 2-year, $10 million deal. Not huge for fantasy, but I thought I'd throw it in there. It was kind of moving to see him in the press conference. He got choked up, a guy from a real small school who didn't know if he was going to make it. And he's been very solid and reliable as a backup, probably never going to be a star there, but I thought it was a nice moment.
Yeah, he's another Tommy DeVito kind of guy. Good story, works his butt off, not overwhelming set of tools by any stretch. But we see year after year after year the value of having a good backup quarterback. And I think that's what Bagent is turning into. One of those guys that, if you need him for a couple games, he isn't going to just be completely overmatched. And he may even surprise a little bit. It's probably not a guy that's going to carry you for 17 or pull a Matt Castle on you. But he works hard, brings a little bit of excitement, good athlete, and he's a great story.
We'll end with a little bit of injury news, a trio of wide receivers popping up here, which is a good segue to our top 25 wide receivers. Chris Godwin going to come off PUP this week, but not likely to play until October. So good news, bad news for fantasy players. Johnny Wilson, who I know you've been a fan of, second-year player for the Eagles. I thought he looked good in preseason. He is out for the season with a knee and ankle injury. And Jalen Polk, who was a second-round pick for the Patriots last year, didn't do anything as a rookie. Going to be out the entire year with, I believe it was a shoulder operation. Do you think Polk ever going to make an impact?
I think Jalen Polk is just he's turning into a lost pick. They are adding wide receivers in that, second, third, fourth, fifth round. They're bringing in effective undrafted free agents. And, they brought in Stephon Diggs, and it was sort of one of those situations where Polk really needed to establish something this year to maybe get an opportunity to build into next year, to carve out a role. And unfortunately, missing the season isn't going to do it. So it doesn't portend good things to come for Jalen Polk. I like you. I like Johnny Wilson because of the mismatch factor of him. A 6'6", 6'7" wide receiver that runs pretty well. Every time I watch him play, I'm put in mind of former Philadelphia Eagle Harold Carmichael. And I was really kind of hoping something could develop. We'll see. Honestly, I'm more optimistic about Johnny Wilson than I am Jalen Polk, just because I think Wilson brings a mismatched skill set to the table. You can put him out wide. There are not a lot of wide receivers that are going to be able to compete with him for the jump ball. Maybe he develops more to his game. I think he can. He was a productive receiver at Florida State, but he isn't overly fast, and he's behind a couple really good ones in A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. So maybe it works out in his favor that he gets to take a year off, learn the system even better, come in next year with a chance to win the wide receiver 3 role there in Philadelphia.
Live preseason game going on right now. Panthers leading the Steelers 3-0. Never a great sign that Jaylen Warren not only had to start a third preseason game where the backups appear to be playing, but actually has already fumbled. So something to feel good about. We are talking top 25 wide receivers. So Dennis, I will let you kick off. Why don't you give 25 to 14? Those are the areas that I marked with color bars.
I appreciate you pointing that out the last couple shows.
Well, I thought it made it easier.
Why don't you tell everybody your co-host is an idiot?
I lose my place all the time, man. That's why I went and started putting those in there, because I'm like, I can't. They're not lining up. Look, age is a beautiful thing.
All right, so 25, I got the Zay Flowers. I think he's established himself as the wide receiver 1 in Baltimore pretty comfortably, but he's had some injury issues, missed a little bit of time, and Rashad Bateman pretty much went and decided he was going to become the red zone guy there, and has stepped up and taken a specific role. I think Flowers is the volume guy. He's the deep threat, the number 1. And despite Mark Andrews and Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson is a very efficient passer at all phases of the game. I know they brought in DeAndre Hopkins. I feel like we're in the chase a title phase for DeAndre Hopkins. I think he's been a great receiver. I think he's still competent, but he's no Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers at wide receiver 25. 24, I got Devonta Smith. I almost feel like I'm pressing this one a little bit because it feels like A.J. Brown has sort of said, there is no skinny Batman. It's Batman and Robin. Smith is a good enough receiver that he'd be the number 1 option on, what do you think, 20 NFL teams. He gets lost in the mix a little bit. The addition of Saquon Barkley, the tush push with Jalen Hurts. But I do think that one of the things Smith has learned, that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so I think he's more open to squeaking a little bit this year. I don't think wide receiver 24 is out of the question. 23, I got Jamison Williams. I have, Williams and Amon-Ra still, I think, ranked pretty high, despite the loss of Ben Johnson. I think Johnny Morton is going to try to continue to do the things that worked, put his own stamp on that Lions offense. They're still going to be exciting and going for it on fourth down. And I think Williams has just gotten better and better, and potentially he could push to be the alpha there in Detroit. I know Amon-Ra's a volume hog, but I don't think there's anybody on the Detroit roster that can compete with Jameson Williams' speed. And he has the ability to change the game in one play, more so than any receiver on that team. 22, I got Tyreek Hill. Go back and forth with Tyreek Hill. Is he too high? Is he too low? Is his head still in the game? I saw no disrespect intended as it relates to Tyreek Hill, but apparently he had more newborn children last year than he did touchdowns. I think that's a big distraction, given the number of kids and baby mamas he already had. So, Miami is looking like a team that's teetering on the brink of holding it all together. And this could be right on for Tyreek. It could be way low. It could be way high. There's a lot of danger in this offense. Mike McDaniel very easily could be the first coach fired this year. This could all fall apart. But I do still believe in Tyreek Hill's skills and ability. So if he can avoid having himself an Antonio Brown moment, he could still put up a good year. 21, I got Devontae Adams. Getting a little nervous with Matthew Stafford's back. But I think him and Puka Nacua can coexist and be very, very productive. And Matthew Stafford knows what side his bread is buttered on. And as long as he's in the game, Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua are going to get the ball plenty. 20, wide receiver 20, I got DK Metcalf. Again, another situation where there's a quarterback that is a little bit flaky, an offensive coordinator that loves himself some tight ends. But they don't really have an established wide receiver 2 yet, since they traded away George Pickens. And DK Metcalf, while having an alpha wide receiver build, there are certainly holes in his route tree, things he does not do well. But I think he's the wide receiver 1 here in Pittsburgh, and Aaron Rodgers is going to want to throw the ball. And this is the guy I think he throws it to the most. Number 19, I got Mike Evans. Now, I don't know if we're in for a 1,001-yard season or a 1,400-yard season. I think he gets 1,000 yards again. But I think he also, with Jalen McMillan and Chris Godwin's injury issues, he's going to start the year hot, splitting with Emeka Egbuka. I think the other wide receiver 3 they have there is not going to be a real threat to Mike Evans' volume. Him and Baker Mayfield have good chemistry. I think they'll continue to do that. The running game is going to be strong, even with another offensive coordinator in the mix. But I got Mike Evans at 19. Number 18, I got Cortland Sutton, fresh off a contract extension, developed great chemistry with Bo Nix. Honestly, I kept looking for reasons to put him in my top 12. Wouldn't surprise me a bit for him to turn in a wide receiver 1 year, but I think that offense has some weapons with Marvin Mims on the outside. Troy Franklin looks good. Pat Bryant. They've got R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins in the running game, and they brought in Evan Ingram. So there's going to be a lot of mouths to feed. I still think he puts up a great year. Cortland Sutton at 18. There's a whole lot of nervousness in this stretch of wide receivers for me. Number 17 is Terry McLaurin. The contract still isn't done. He's still not practicing. Well, I feel like they're going to get it done. He's going to be just fine. I don't think he's going to get traded. I think moving off of Brian Robinson with the expectation that your new three-headed monster backfield is going to be able to carry you, I think they need McLaurin to get in sooner rather than later. I think he'll still be just fine. Another question mark at 16, Marvin Harrison Jr. I love the talent. I think last year was a learning experience for him. He still put up a pretty decent season, a lot of inconsistency. Some of it because it looked like there were some effort plays, I think, that he needed to change. But also, he was not used consistently to his best ability. There are things he does really, really well, crossing patterns and stuff, and things he does fair, like 9 routes. And they had way too many games where they were like, look, just go deep. It felt like it was really odd. And then he's got, Kyler Murray as his quarterback, and he's fighting for targets with Trey McBride. So I do like the talent still. I think he could still put up a good year. Number 15, I got DJ Moore. It's crazy that his best season was with Justin Fields. I think the Ben Johnson offense is going to be very, very good for him. I think Caleb Williams will be just fine. Going to be productive. I like Rome Odunze a lot. Again, we talk about the Bears could be a destination for Brian Robinson. I do think Robinson would be an upgrade over Roshan Johnson or Kyle Monangai at this point. That's not to say that if they don't upgrade that RB2 spot, that it's going to be bad. But I do like DJ Moore, wide receiver 15. And then at number 14, Lad McConkey. I'm a little nervous about Lad with Keenan Allen coming back. They're going to put Keenan Allen out wide, let Lad do the slot. But Allen is slow, and I don't know that he's necessarily set up to be successful out there. They got Trey Harris. And Lad, while he's capable of playing out wide, I'm more nervous about Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh kind of tamping it down with Omari and Hampton and being a run-first team and just being a low-volume passing offense, despite the fact they got one of the better passers in the NFL at quarterback in Justin Herbert. McConkey put up, 1,200 yards last year. Not a great yard per catch average, 11 or 12 yards. He's productive. I think he's the number one there. But I do think there's something to be nervous about. You're muted.
Another team that's not a very high volume passing offense either. You're right, Lad McConkey, 1149 on the yardage and 82 receptions. It looks like he averaged 14 yards a reception.
Could be wrong.
So a little bit maybe higher than expected. So for me at 25, I have Tyreek Hill. It could be low. It could end up being high because I'm like you. He's getting older. I think he's going to be 31 now because he was 30 last year. Doesn't appear to be in a great headspace with his coach or his quarterback or playing the game of football. He feels like he's teetering on the Antonio Brown complete meltdown precipice, and that is just not a place you want to be. So I have respect for what he's put up in the past, but he also has some off-field stuff going on now, some real ugliness with his wife and with some other stuff. I don't think those are ever good signs either, especially for a player who's not always locked down and focused. Number 24, I have Mike Evans. I think he's going to be solid and have a good season. Again, I kind of went back and forth about what I was going to do with Tampa Bay. I have Jerry Jeudy at 23. He had an excellent year last year. Probably, he finished better than this last year. Maybe he could go higher. There's a few of these guys I think are being held back by some curious or undesirable offensive situations, and he is one of them. 22, Devontae Adams. He's another guy that could be higher. I, like you, am getting a little nervous about Matthew Stafford, and I listened to pieces of his meeting the media today, and there was a level of defensiveness in his answering of questions that gave me pause. I know they have Jimmy G back there, and I think from a team standpoint, the Rams would be fine if Jimmy G goes in. But from a fantasy standpoint, I don't know that I'm feeling as good about those Rams wide receivers with Garoppolo back there. I have Emeka Ibuka at 21. He seems to have been the star of camp there. And with Godwin not back till October, Jalen McMillan now on IR, Mike Evans is still good, but is definitely older and seems to have kind of more of a specific role. I think Ibuka can emerge as the number one receiver there. And I think there's plenty of volume to be had with Baker Mayfield. I have Zay Flowers at 20. Maybe ends up being a little bit high. I just feel like he is consistent and a consistent kind of number one receiver option for a Baltimore team that has, designs on playoffs and Super Bowl every year. They're not really just focused on competing in the regular season. Rashad Bateman seems to have a specific role. They like him for what he is. I know DeAndre Hopkins is there, but I think Flowers probably their most consistent guy. Same goes for my 19, Cortland Sutton. I like what he does as number one. I'm excited to see what they get out of Evan Ingram and Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant, but Cortland Sutton has been kind of the number one locked-in guy as their best wide receiver. I have DJ Moore at 18. He's another guy. He could go higher. That wouldn't be a shock. But the Bears have a lot of weapons. And even beyond the names that have caught our eye, when I was watching them play their first team against Buffalo in that national game, I mean, the 36-yard touchdown pass went to Olamide Zaccheaus. So they're going to get a lot of people involved. He's there. Odunze's there. Burden's there. They have two tight ends. Swift is there. They have a collection of other receivers. I just think there's a lot of guys, and I don't think it's going to be kind of a narrow, forced funnel. I have Marvin Harrison Jr. at 17. Another offense where I don't trust in the volume, and this one makes me a little nervous. Let me ask you, where do you think Marvin Harrison Jr. ranked on a points per game basis among wide receivers last year?
He was like 39th or something.
He was 42nd, the same points per game as Quentin Johnson. It's not great, Bob. I'm hopeful he can take a step up this year, but I still, we make jokes, but I'm not going to believe Kyler Murray is going to throw for 4,000 yards until it happens. And Trey McBride is there. I think those are still the two guys you want in fantasy, but I think that puts a lid. Like if Trey McBride got injured, I might make a case for Harrison going higher, but I think it's hard if you're talking about a team that's probably not going to throw for more than 3,900 yards to have a top 10 tight end and a top 10 wide receiver. I have DK Metcalf at 16, both because I think he's a good player and because Pittsburgh talked about not really having, their wide receiver two options are charitably Robert Woods, second-year breakout for Roman Wilson, or tiny slot wonder Calvin Austin III. So I think DK Metcalf will do just fine. Last year, Aaron Rodgers, even though we don't think he had a great season by Aaron Rodgers standards, still managed to make both Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams pretty fantasy relevant at the top end of wide receiver. So I think he'll be good for DK Metcalf. I have Terry McLaurin at 15. I am getting a little nervous. Did you see the report that Washington offered him to Pittsburgh for a second-round pick and Pratt Freiermuth, and Pittsburgh said that was too much? to ask. That gives me pause. If that's, and there were some real reporters who were saying that that was the case. And that gives me pause. That has not been a good situation, even as recently as Monday when they were pumping Washington folks about it. Not a lot of positive momentum toward getting him back on the field. They removed him from PUP to kind of force him to either come back to practice or start taking fines, which doesn't seem to bode well. And like you, I have Ladd McConkey at 14. It's probably good for the Chargers. They got Keenan Allen back. I'm curious to see what Trey Harris does. There's some interest in Keandre Lambert-Smith. Quentin Johnson's still there, but I think McConkey is the guy and seem to have a real connection with Herbert. But that's another offense that isn't particularly robust when it comes to throwing the ball. They want to be a more run-centric team. It'll be interesting, too, to see how that Slater injury impacts them. They do not have a particularly easy schedule. So you and I have the same 13 guys in our top 13, but we have a different order. So why don't you give your top 13?
All right. So I have Garrett Wilson at 13. Like I mentioned with DJ Moore, he took DJ Moore to his best season of his career. Though I'll be honest, I'm not liking what I hear about Justin Fields' performance this preseason, so I'm getting nervous. There's not a lot of competition for Garrett Wilson, but it'd be awful if his biggest competition was his quarterback going full Anthony Richardson. 12, I got T. Higgins. I just feel like we're in a situation where Cincinnati is going to throw the ball a lot. That defense, even when Trey Hendrickson comes back, is still going to be not good. They're going to have to put up points, and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are the vehicle that's going to happen with. 11, I got Jackson Smith and Jigba. I'd love to put him up higher. They got rid of a lot of competition, and then they brought in Cooper Kupp, who – is starting his revenge arc. He wanted to stay in LA. But I think that putting Smith and Jigba higher puts a lot of faith that I just don't have in Sam Darnold. So
Really.
I like Darnold.
And Sam Arnold either.
I like Darnold, but I just don't know that he's going to produce a top 5, top 8 wide receiver. 10, I got A.J. Brown. I'd love to have Brown higher, but it's a function of volume in Philadelphia and the way they run the ball and are able to control the game with their defense. It's just tough to bet on him being an elite, I guess, a top 5 fantasy option week in and week out. Number 9, I got Drake London. I think London is primed for a breakout year. Is Penix going to be able to deliver it? They've got Bijan Robinson. They've got a banged-up Darnell Mooney. Never reached his potential Kyle Pitts. There are a lot of questions around Drake London. He had a great year last year. Is he going to be able to take one more step? Number 8, I got Brian Thomas. I like Thomas a lot. He had a phenomenal year last year. I don't have Travis Hunter super high in my rankings. I think Hunter's going to have an okay year. What do I have him at?
I think we both had him in the 30s.
Yeah, I got him at 36. We both had him at 36. Some of it is Hunter, some of it is, will Liam Cohen be able to get more out of Trevor Lawrence than we've seen in the past? I mean, at some point we have to accept, the quarterback is who the quarterback is, and maybe he's not elite. Maybe he's just good. Number 7, I got Nico Collins. A lot could ride on Nico Collins' back if that offensive line can hold up. if they can keep CJ Stroud from getting the snot knocked out of him week after week, especially the way the running game has taken some hits, Nico could have a phenomenal year. Not only Nico, but Christian Kirk could have a good year. Jaden Higgins and Jalen. It's not Noel there. It's Jalen. No, it is Noel.
Noel.
Yeah. Could
He's a
also
very
be
Christmas
productive.
receiver.
Huh?
He's a Christmas receiver.
Yeah. But I expect Nico to continue, him and CJ Stroud to continue to build on the chemistry that they have had. I've got Amon-Ra St. Brown at number 6. There is a little bit of nervousness about the change in offensive coordinator, but they have talked a commitment to continuing the things that they've done well under Ben Johnson. So I expect he's going to continue to get pretty high volume. Number 5, I got Malik Neighbors. He had 190 targets last year. With you, me, and my 78-year-old neighbor throwing him the ball last season. So I feel like he's moving into that Justin Jefferson QB proof kind of mode. Number 4, Puka Nacua. Puka's had a couple injuries, but I don't think bringing in Devontae Adams is going to diminish his target earning capabilities. And as long as we don't end up with the Jimmy Garoppolo experience, I think Puka is going to be just fine. Number 3, I got Justin Jefferson. Like I said, he's shown himself to be quarterback proof. It's going to be a real test this year with J.J. McCarthy. I don't know. Maybe Kevin O'Connell's got somebody out stealing the signs like McCarthy had when he was at Michigan, and that'll be beneficial to him. But Jordan Addison's out for 3 games. Running game is good, but nobody elite there. They had some issues at O-line last year, but it's generally pretty good. I think Jefferson will be fine. Number 2, I got CeeDee Lamb. Dallas is just poised to have to throw the ball a lot. I got Jamar Chase at number 1 to remove any suspense. I expect Dallas and Cincinnati to lead the league in pass attempts. Those 2 quarterbacks are going to throw the ball a lot. George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I got to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if they finish 1, 2, 3, 4 in fantasy for passing at wide receiver. I've got Pickens down lower and the other guy, Higgins down lower, but both defenses have some opportunities, and these 2 wide receivers here at the top have shown themselves to be the top 2 in the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, so you and I both have Garrett Wilson at 13. I don't know what to make of the Jets. It'll be fun next week when we're talking over-unders and record predictions, because it feels like it's all over the map. And, he is really the only professional receiver that they have, but that could also be a bad thing, because if you were going to defend the Jets pass, if you're a defense playing against the Jets, you're rolling a lot of coverage to Garrett Wilson, because you're not worried about Josh Reynolds or Mason Taylor probably torching you. So unless somebody steps up, that could also be a bad thing. But he's been so good, couldn't put him lower. I have Jackson Smith and Jigba at 12. I think he's going to be strong, but I like you. Is Sam Darnold going to find the magic? You said, is he capable of producing like a really high wide receiver? Justin Jefferson was wide receiver 2 with him last year, and Addison was in the top 24. But that was a different coaching staff. I also think Seattle with Kubiak wants to be a lot more run heavy. So I still think JSN is going to be good. I still think he's low end wide receiver 1, but couldn't bring him higher. AJ Brown, I have a wide receiver 11. I think the only thing that held Brown back last year was missing games. I have T. Higgins at 10, and I'm all in on this Cincinnati passing game. T. Higgins tried to put me off of it by already having an injury scare at camp today. But, he was wide receiver 6 on a points per game basis last year. Even while Jamar Chase was wide receiver 1 on a total points per game, receptions, yardage, touchdown, all world. T. Higgins, when he's out there, both of them can eat. And judging by some of the preseason games where they've been playing starters, that defense hasn't gotten any better. So I think both those guys are going to need to eat. I have Drake London at 9. Game stretch with Penix. If you looked at the 3 games for Kyle Pitts, it would probably make you more nervous. And some of that is buoyed by that week 18 when Drake London went off and had a 40-point game. But he had solid 11 or more points in all 3 of those games with Penix. They seem to have a good connection, so hopefully that continues. I have Nico Collins at 8. I think he's going to be the best of a decent but transitioning group for the Houston Texans. And then I have Brian Thomas Jr. at 7. So I just have him flipped from what you did. I liked what Brian Thomas did last year. I think going, with Liam Cohen, if they have any hope of getting that Jaguars offense going, it's going to be another great year from Thomas and getting Hunter going and getting that running game going. I have Puka Nacua at 6. He definitely has upside to go higher. Matthew Stafford still makes me a little bit nervous. I just felt more comfortable having him below the guys I have in the top 5. I have Amon-Ra St. Brown at 5. A great player. I think their offense is going to still remain somewhat consistent even with the change they kind of hired from within. Malik Neighbors at 4. And honestly, he could do better than that because Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Jackson Dart, no matter who is back there, is going to be better than the shit show he was handed at quarterback last year. And he was pretty phenomenal. I have CeeDee Lamb at 3. I debated whether I would flip him and Justin Jefferson, who I have at 2, kind of like you did. But I think Justin Jefferson is just so good. And with Addison missing some games, I think he's the one they're going to force it to. And then I still have Chase at number 1. I think Cincinnati going to be throwing the ball quite a bit. So, Dennis, in this group, who is the biggest riser for you?
For me, the biggest riser is Jameson Williams. We talked last year about the things he could bring to the table, but would it actually happen? And he put up 1,000-yard season. I had a very productive year, provided a skill set to that Detroit offense that really complements what Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Sam Laporta do. And with Williams, St. Brown, Laporta, Gibbs, and Montgomery, I mean, it's tough for Jared Goff to be like, he's got to work hard. Like, they won games last year. Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions. It was just like, he's got an embarrassment of riches. So for me, Jameson Williams being up at, where do I have him? 23 is a significant climb from where I had him last year. You're muted again.
For me, it's Brian Thomas Jr. I don't think I had him as the number 1 Jacksonville receiver going into last year. I still thought Christian Kirk would end up being their number 1. I thought Brian Thomas would be fine, but I did not see that huge breakout coming, and I think he's just been pretty incredible. Who in this group took the biggest dip for you?
Obviously, if not to everyone, it's Tyreek Hill. I think last year he was, even with some questions, I think he was pretty comfortable in the top 10, maybe even top 6 or 7 receivers last year. And there's just so many questions about what's going on with him off the field and how it's affecting him on the field and what's going on with the team around him, whether it's Tua's health or underperformance or whatnot. It's just, it's I don't know. It's hard to, I felt like I had to work to have him as high as 22.
Yeah, he was my biggest faller too. I was just looking. I think at this time last year, I had him as wide receiver one because I thought Miami was going to come back roaring. How the mighty have fallen. I think he would also be my biggest question out of this group because not only do I have questions about his offense and his situation and whether his team's going to implode, I have questions about whether he's just going to implode and like throw his helmet and flip off the crowd and walk off the field. Which we've seen before. But outside of Hill, do you have any other guys in this group who are huge questions for you?
So in the top 25, there were a ton. DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers. Is Rodgers going to be able to do that? Terry McLaurin in the contract situation, Marvin Harrison, and is he going to take that next step? The biggest one for me, though, right now that makes me nervous is Garrett Wilson. And I don't have, I'm not expecting Justin Fields to come out and throw the ball like Tom Brady. But I am expecting him to be able to be competent. And there's a lot of talk that, he was 1 for 5 for 4 yards, I think, in the last preseason game. You need to be better than that, even in preseason. Especially when you are, working to change the narrative around your career. So it does make me a little bit nervous. I know they've got similarly skilled but significantly older Tyrod Taylor backing him up, who I think is dinged up again. So I'm not
already out.
Not expecting if Wilson doesn't make the leap, I'm not expecting a ton from the backup quarterbacks there in New York.
Who is one guy outside the top 25 who, if conditions break right, you could see springboard up?
Oh boy. Probably Jerry Jeudy sticks out to me the most. He had a breakout year last year. He had some inconsistency in Denver, as you well know. A lot will come down to what happens at quarterback. Is the offensive line able to stay healthy, be consistent? But he's the number one. He's the veteran in Cleveland right now, which is, I think, going into last season, if you were to say to anybody, Jerry Jeudy's going to be leading your wide receiver group next year, you'd have been, especially you would have been, you're in for a lot of trouble.
I would have just given you a hug and laughed.
Now, Cleveland may be in for a lot of trouble, but I don't know that it's going to necessarily be because Jerry Jeudy shits the bed.
I thought about this long and hard. I'm going to go with Chris Godwin. They don't think he's going to play until October, but that hasn't actually been a definitive thing from the team. I think it's a good sign that he's coming off PUP before the season because that means they don't want to suffer. I think if you get put on PUP going into the regular season, you have to sit out either 4 or 6 games. And the fact that they
I think it's 6.
The fact that they don't want to do that is encouraging. Godwin really had something going on with Baker last year. He was wide receiver 2 on a points per game basis last season. He was averaging 19.7 fantasy points per game. And I don't know if he's somehow able to come back. The other one I thought about is Devonta Smith, but he's not super far out of my top 25. But Godwin, I have him pretty far down because we're not sure when he's going to be able to come back. But that is a team that throws the ball a fair amount, and Baker has been really good in that role. And I would not be shocked if Godwin came back and was healthy and started putting up some big numbers. So that's who I am going with.
Good call.
That'll be it for us today. We will be back next Tuesday. They will have done cut down, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interesting news. We'll also find out who gets traded, gets put on the pup. You see a lot of flurry of activities. The last preseason games all take place on Saturday. And I think the cut down window is, I think it's 4 Eastern on Tuesday. So it is the day we come out. So all that stuff should pretty well transpire over the weekend. We're also going to do over unders. We're going to look at those for all 32 NFL teams on Tuesday. That'll be a little bit of fun trying to give our predictions. And then next Thursday, we'll talk about our playoff predictions and our award predictions, because we are getting to the end here. The regular season is it's 2 weeks from tonight. Guys, it is so close you can actually taste it. The Cowboys are already preparing their post-game concession speech, and Jerry Jones is already going to prepare his speech to explain why Micah Parsons is no longer on the team. So that's how you know you're close to the regular season. But should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to next week. But if you have some downtime between games, Dennis, what can the people do?
Well, before I get to that, so I had this reminder pop up on my calendar today, and it said, check Dameon Pierce's fantasy finishes. So when Pierce came out in 2022 and won the starting running back job in Houston, I liked him okay, but I definitely had him in the hashtag 2 to 3 year window. And I've been trying to search my Twitter account and find my conversation with this person who spent an awful lot of time telling me how stupid I was and how good Dameon Pierce is. Now, I respect their opinion and their love for the hometown Houston Texans, but I felt that Pierce, as a 3rd or 4th round pick, was a stereotypical hashtag 2 to 3 year window back. He did miss 3 games or 4 games in 2022, put up 929 yards, scored 4 touchdowns, caught 30 passes for another touchdown, finished as RB 27. And then 2023 rolled around. 416 yards and 2 touchdowns, played 1 more game, only caught 13 passes, no touchdowns, finished as RB 55. And then last year rolled around. Now, we didn't expect a bounce back from Dameon Pierce last year. With the new offense there, we were, and I'm using we as in me and lots of other analysts, we understood that Dameon Pierce wasn't great in the zone blocking scheme. Last year, 293 yards, only caught, 2 passes. He did have a big 92-yard touchdown run last year. Wide receiver 73. And you can bet my petty ass, if I can find that tweet and who that person was, I'm going to tag him and let him know, because I've been waiting. So,
and he's not even healthy this year.
Correct, because he's got probably his best opportunity this year to bounce back, because the scheme has changed. They're less zone blocking, more man blocking this year under the new offensive coordinator, and he's just not healthy. They have an injured Joe Mixon and an aging Nick Chubb there.
Well, and you forgot in 2023 he got demoted for Devin Singletary.
I mean, it really goes to the point where when if they're not a 1st round draft pick or 2nd round at the latest, you have to be very careful with your fantasy assets. And
it's the same thing with Michael Carter. I remember after the first year, everybody was talking about how he was destined for greatness, and his team went and drafted Breece Hall. And now he's the 4th back on Arizona. I watched him play some in preseason. I was like, oh, yeah, he's still in the NFL.
So anyways, if you're out there and you remember the conversation, give me a shout out. Tell me I'm right. And I think we probably talked about it on the shows a couple times too, back there in the preseason of 2022. So if anybody gets super ambitious, they can do what I do. Go to your favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable, go back to our epically long catalog of shows and check out 2022 preseason and me talking about Dameon Pierce, hashtag 2 to 3 year window. Shout out to Dynasty Nerds about the concept. But have yourself a great week 3 of the preseason. NFL is just around the corner.
He definitely won that. He was more like a 1 1/4 year window.
Right.
That'll do it for us today. We'll be back on Tuesday with all the latest news and some over-unders. Until then, have a wonderful weekend.